Marcus didn't even hesitate. The screaming tires, the shattered glass, the twisted wreck, all of it blurred into one as he sprinted across the intersection. His boots hit the asphalt hard. He didn't think about his aching back or the fact that he was still wearing his janitor uniform soaked in rain. He just yanked open the crushed driver's side door. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" he shouted, his arms already reaching into the smoke. The woman was unconscious. Blood traced down her temple. Her seatbelt jammed. The engine hissed, something sparked, and for a split second, Marcus saw fire. He ripped the belt with bare hands, pulled her out. Car exploded behind him. By the time the ambulance arrived, the woman was breathing. Safe. She'd live. But as the paramedics lifted her into the stretcher, Marcus finally saw her face smeared with blood, but unmistakable. It was her. The CEO who'd fired him, publicly ruined him, blacklisted him, took away everything, even custody of his son. And now, he had just saved her life. But should he have? The rain was coming down in cold, angry sheets, slicing through the night like nails on glass. Thunder groaned somewhere in the distance, but Marcus barely noticed. He was on his way home, hood pulled tight, soaked to the bone after a double shift mopping the halls at Lincoln High. His boots slapped against the sidewalk, the water rising in his socks with each step. Then he heard it. Screech. Metal. Impact. A sound no one ever forgets. The sharp gut punch crunch of two cars colliding. Marcus's head snapped toward the intersection ahead. One car had run the red light, slamming full force into a black Mercedes that spun violently, hopped the curb, and crashed into a lamppost. Sparks exploded. The engine hissed. And Marcus ran. No second thought, no hesitation, just instinct. As he approached, he saw flames licking under the hood. The driver's side door was crumpled inward. Steam poured from the radiator. Inside, he spotted a woman, head slumped, blood running from her brow, pinned by the seatbelt. "Ma'am!" Marcus yelled, yanking the door handle. Stuck. He slammed his shoulder into the door once, twice. Metal groaned. It finally gave with a scream. Smoke filled his lungs, but he forced himself inside, cutting the belt with his box cutter, the same one he used at work to open chemical boxes. She was barely conscious, her lips moving, eyes fluttering. "I got you," he whispered. He cradled her, dragged her free. 10 steps away from the wreck, the car exploded, a blast that sent heat scorching against his back, throwing sparks across the street. The woman coughed weakly in his arms. Sirens wailed in the distance. Only now, as Marcus looked down at her face covered in blood, rain, and smoke, did the horror truly sink in. He knew her, even after all these years. Even now. Claire Halden, the woman who had destroyed his career, who lied in court, who took his son. And now, he had just saved her life. His hands trembled, not from the cold, but from everything that memory brought flooding back. The ambulance. Lights cast a pulsing glow across the wet pavement as Marcus stepped away from the wreckage, his soaked boots squelching with each step. Paramedics took over. Police cordoned off the scene. No one noticed the man who saved her quietly disappearing into the shadows. He didn't stick around for a thank you. He couldn't. His heart was pounding, not from the adrenaline, but from the face. Her face. Claire Halden. He hadn't heard her name in years, but he saw her in nightmares often enough. He walked the rest of the way home through the rain, the city growing quieter with each block. His jacket, 2 sizes too big and stained with floor wax, clung to his back. His shoulders sagged with fatigue, the kind of weariness that didn't come from long shifts, but from years of being broken down and never quite standing up straight again. His apartment was a single room above a pawn shop. No elevator, no heat. He climbed the narrow staircase, unlocked the door, and stepped into silence. A microwave, a folding chair, a small table stacked with overdue bills. On the wall, taped with yellowing scotch tape, was a photo. A boy, maybe 6 or 7, laughing as he sat on Marcus's shoulders. Marcus stared at it for a long time. His jaw clenched. He took off his jacket and sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing his hands together. The burns weren't serious. Nothing was physically but inside. That was another story. He thought about Claire, about the courtroom, about how her lawyers twisted everything, made him look like a violent, unstable man. He thought about the day he lost custody of Lucas, the sound of the gavel, Claire's cold eyes, and now, tonight, fate had thrown her back into his arms, literally. Was it a warning? A joke? Or something worse? His phone buzzed. A news alert. Tech CEO Claire Halden in critical condition after car crash. Anonymous. Hero pulls her from flames. He stared at it. His finger hovered over the screen, trembling. He didn't want to be a hero. He just wanted to be a dad again. And now, the past he buried had clawed its way back to the surface. There was a time when Marcus wore suits instead of second-hand uniforms. It wasn't long ago, really. Just long enough to feel like someone else's life. Back then, Marcus Santiago was the guy who showed up first and left last. The kind of man who didn't have a college degree, but made up for it with hunger, grit, relentless self-belief. He started out cleaning server rooms at Stratastech, a small AI firm in its startup phase. By the time his son was born, Marcus had worked his way into systems management. No formal training, just tutorials, late nights, and a determination that wouldn't quit. He was respected. Hell, he was even admired. They used to say, "Give it to Marcus. If anyone can fix it, he can." The only thing he couldn't fix was time. He was working late when his son Lucas took his first steps. Missed his first birthday party because of a last-minute deployment. Missed more than a few bedtime stories. Claire said she understood back then. She was busy too, rising fast in the same company. Always polished, always poised, always 2 steps ahead. They started out as colleagues, then lovers, then parents. Then competitors. Marcus didn't realize how fast things were shifting until it was too late. He thought they were building a life, but Claire was building an empire. And when their values began to clash, when Marcus wanted a stable life and more time with Lucas, and Claire wanted bigger deals, longer hours, more power, the cracks turned into canyons. He tried to slow things down. She called him small-minded. He wanted balance. She called him weak. One night, after a heated argument, she packed her things and took Lucas with her. That was the beginning of the end. The man who had once built a career from scratch, brick by bloody brick, now stood outside his own life, watching someone else raise his son, watching another man take his seat at company dinners. And then, not long after, Claire became his boss. Marcus used to believe hard work was enough. That doing the right thing meant you'd land on your feet. But that was before he learned that some people rise by pushing others down. And some empires are built on the backs of the broken. They weren't supposed to fall for each other. Marcus was in operations. Claire was strategy. Different floors, different teams. But late nights turned into coffee runs. Coffee runs turned into inside jokes. And before long, Marcus found himself drawn to her sharpness, the way she commanded a room, the clarity in her voice, the impossible confidence that made investors lean in when she spoke. Claire wasn't warm, but she was magnetic. She didn't laugh much, but when she did, Marcus felt like the center of the universe. He didn't fit her world, not really. He didn't have the pedigree, the degrees, the boardroom polish. But she said that was what she liked. "You're real," she told him once, curled up beside him on his thrifted couch, her head on his shoulder. "Everyone I work with is playing a game. You're not." They got married in a quiet ceremony at City Hall. No family, no fanfare. Just 2 ambitious people trying to carve out a life. Between meetings and milestones. Then Lucas was born. Everything changed. For Marcus, holding his son for the first time was like discovering a new planet. His priorities shifted overnight. He wanted to be present, to come home earlier, to take fewer risks. For Claire, it was the opposite. She returned to work after 6 weeks, dove deeper into the company, came home later, traveled more. They stopped talking. Or worse, talked only through passive-aggressive notes stuck to the fridge. She needs stability, Marcus argued. He needs ambition, Claire shot back. Fights turned cold. Affection turned formal. Nights stretched longer. Then one evening, Claire came home from a business trip and said flatly, "This isn't working." Marcus thought she meant the argument. She meant the marriage. She filed for separation a week later. Took Lucas with her. Said it was temporary, that they'd figure it out. But Marcus saw the truth behind her eyes. She'd already moved on, not to another man, but to another version of herself. One that had no room for Marcus or his dreams, or his doubts. And when she was promoted to interim CEO 2 months later, it all made sense. He wasn't just her ex-husband anymore. He was now beneath her. Marcus sat in the courtroom, knees bouncing, palms slick with sweat, trying to hold himself together as the lawyer across from him dissected his life. Unstable employment history, lacks permanent housing, emotional volatility. Words that felt like bullets, each one twisting a little deeper. Claire sat on the opposite side of the courtroom, polished in a navy suit, her expression unreadable. She didn't look at him, didn't flinch, just stared straight ahead while her attorney painted him as unfit, a loving father turned liability. Marcus wanted to shout, to tell the judge how he bathed Lucas every night, read him stories about dragons and stars, how Lucas called him super dad when he fixed the broken closet door, how every weekend he made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, because Lucas once said his syrup needed a T-Rex raft. But those stories didn't come with documentation. Claire's side did. She had printed photos of Lucas in his private preschool, his clean room in her high-rise apartment, a glowing character. Letter from her corporate mentor. Marcus had a receipt for a second-hand crib. When it was his turn to speak, he tried to stay calm. "He needs both of us," Marcus said, voice tight. "I've never missed a weekend. I love him more than anything." Claire's lawyer smiled faintly. "Love is not a parenting plan, Mr. Santiago." The judge ruled the next morning. Full physical custody awarded to the mother. Visitation every other weekend, supervised until further notice. It felt like the ground collapsed under him. The gavel hit the block like a coffin closing. Outside the courtroom, Claire finally met his eyes, not with anger, not with guilt, just indifference. "It's for the best," she said softly. Marcus stared at her, searching for the woman he once knew, the one who danced barefoot in his kitchen, who whispered that he made her feel safe. She was gone. He walked out into the parking lot and sat in his car, hands on the steering wheel, not turning the key. Lucas wasn't just taken from him. He was edited out of Marcus's life, like he was a chapter that no longer served the narrative Claire was writing. And Marcus knew. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of the unraveling. It was a Monday. Marcus remembered, because he brought donuts to the office, a peace offering after missing the Friday stand-up. He still believed in showing up, still believed in doing right by people. The security badge didn't work. He tried again. The red light blinked. Access denied. Confused, he went around the side, buzzing into reception. The girl behind the glass gave him a look, awkward, rehearsed. Marcus, I think you need to speak to HR. Her, he frowned. Why? Don't know exactly. They said you'd stop by this morning. His stomach turned cold. Inside the HR office, a man in a blue suit, someone Marcus had never met before, greeted him with a file in hand. "Too calm, too clinical. We're letting you go, Marcus." The words hit like a slap. "What?" "Restructuring," the man said, not meeting his eyes. The company's shifting resources. It's not personal. It's always personal. Marcus muttered. The HR rep slid a document across the table. Legal language, severance offer. We'll need your badge and laptop. No warning, no notice. Just ... erased. Marcus sat frozen. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. This was the company he helped build. He'd been there longer than half the board. He'd trained Claire when she joined, stayed through 3 reorgs, pulled 16-hour shifts during launch windows. And now, discarded like office trash. He rose slowly, voice quiet. This wasn't a budget cut. The HR rep hesitated. No, it wasn't. Marcus narrowed his eyes. Who signed off? The man shifted in his seat, clearing his throat. Claire Halden. The room went still. He should have seen it coming after the custody fight, after the courtroom tension, after she was named CEO. But still, he hadn't believed she'd go that far. Thank you for your service, the man said, like Marcus was a soldier being sent home. He walked out of the office carrying only his coat. No laptop, no desk goodbye. Just 32 unread messages and a dozen coworkers who suddenly couldn't make eye contact. When he stepped into the elevator, the walls gleamed with posters of the company's values. Integrity, growth, family. He laughed once, dry, hollow. Then the doors closed. At first, Marcus did what anyone with a shred of dignity left would do. He tried to stay calm. He drafted an email to HR asking for clarification. Kept the tone professional, patient, believed. They'd call him back. They didn't. He sent another. And another. After 5 days, the only response he got was a single-line email. We have no further comment regarding your separation from the company. Marcus didn't want to believe it, but the silence spoke louder than any words. He tried to reach out to colleagues, the ones who used to laugh with him over lunch or lean on him during project crunches. Some ignored his messages altogether. Others replied cautiously, "Wish I could help, man, but this is way above my head. I was told not to get involved. Claire's making big changes. Sorry." Even his mentor, Gerald, the man who once called Marcus the heart of the team, gave him nothing more than a cold voicemail. Let's just give things some space right now. Claire's fingerprints were everywhere, even if she hadn't signed the execution papers in ink. When he went to a lawyer, they told him the same thing. You could sue for wrongful termination, but with no official reason on file, no written complaint, and no witnesses willing to speak out. It's your word against $1 billion company, Marcus pressed. There has to be something I can do, the lawyer sighed. Do you have emails? Proof? Any history of retaliation? He opened his phone, searched through old texts, found one from Claire, weeks before the firing during the custody fight. You made your choice. Now you'll live with it. But it wasn't enough. Not legally. He sat outside the law office for 20 minutes after the meeting, just staring at the windshield as the world moved around him. Horns blared. People passed by, umbrellas bobbing through the rain. No one noticed the man who just lost everything, not to an accident, but to silence. He wasn't just fired. He was being erased. And somehow, that was worse. 2 weeks after losing his job, Marcus put on his last clean dress shirt, borrowed a blazer from his neighbor, and hit the pavement, resume in hand, confidence rehearsed. A dozen applications sent, interviews requested. He still believed in hard work, still believed that the truth would rise eventually. But the world didn't work like that anymore. At the first interview, the hiring manager was polite until she saw his old company name. Oh, you were with Stratastech? Her smile flickered. And what led to your departure? Restructuring, Marcus lead, new leadership changes. She nodded too quickly. Thanks for coming in. He didn't get a call back. At the second interview, the guy was colder. We've heard things, he said bluntly. Nothing official. Of course, but corporate culture matters here. Marcus swallowed hard. What things? The man leaned back in his chair. Look, off the record, there's chatter that you were let go for behavioral issues. Something about instability? Marcus's heart sank. That's not true, the man shrugged. I'm just saying that stuff gets around. Companies talk. It hit him then, like a slap. He'd been blacklisted. Blacklisted without a trial, without a chance to explain. One executive's word, Claire's word, had quietly buried him under a whisper network. He applied for contract work. Nothing. Tried. Freelancing. Nothing. Applied to places that didn't even require a resume. Still nothing. He pawned his old laptop. Canceled his gym membership. Gave up his car. He watched job boards like a hawk, but all the listings blurred together. Every "we'll be in touch" became a lie he could recite in his sleep. Sometimes he thought about calling Claire. Just once. To beg, but he never did. He'd begged in court. He wouldn't do it again. At night, he stared at Lucas's photo taped above his mattress. The boy was older now, 6 going on 7, and Marcus hadn't seen him in 3 months. He whispered to the photo like a prayer. I'm trying, kid. I swear I'm trying. But the silence answered back. In a world that believed everything. Claire said. Marcus Santiago had vanished. Not dead, just erased. The email came late, past midnight, from a burner account with no name. Subject: You didn't deserve what happened. Marcus stared at the screen, eyes blurry from another night of scrolling through job listings he'd never hear back from. He hesitated. Hovered the mouse over the attachment. It could have been a scam, but something told him it wasn't. He clicked it. Opened a PDF. 4 pages. Internal memos from Stratastech, stamped with Claire Halden's digital signature. He scanned the first page. His name jumped out immediately. Subject: Termination recommendation, Marcus Santiago. The words blurred. As he read, Claire hadn't just approved his firing. She initiated it, weeks before the restructuring. While they were still locked in the custody battle, he read every line, his stomach twisting tighter with each paragraph. Potential behavioral risks. Concerns raised regarding emotional stability. Unverified incident involving inappropriate conduct with staff. That last one made his blood run cold. It was a lie. A dangerous, career-ending lie. He remembered that week. HR had asked him vague questions, but nothing ever came of it. No written complaint. No formal notice. Just whispers. Shadows. And now he saw the source. Claire had planted it, and no one questioned her. She was the CEO. He was the janitor with a past. His hands shook as he scrolled to the last page. A confidential note from Claire to HR. Please ensure this matter is handled discreetly. We can't afford reputational risk at this stage of growth. Reputational risk. That's what he was now. A threat to be neutralized. Marcus leaned back in the chair, staring at the screen as if it had just sentenced him to death. She hadn't just taken his son. She'd taken his name. His reputation. His future. For what? To protect her image? Her company? Or was it personal, revenge in a tailored blazer? Marcus didn't know who sent the file. Didn't care. What he did know was that he wasn't crazy. He wasn't paranoid. She really had destroyed him. Not because he failed, but because she could. There comes a moment when even grief runs dry. For Marcus, it came on a Tuesday, gray, unremarkable, except for the silence. He sat at the kitchen table in his tiny apartment, a bottle of cheap whiskey half finished, and the last eviction notice spread out beside it. 3 days left. He hadn't showered in 2. There were no calls to return, no interviews scheduled, no letters to open, just static. Just stillness. He stared at the photo of Lucas, propped up against the salt shaker. That same picture he kept taped to the wall. He picked it up slowly, touched the glass with calloused fingers. The boy's smile felt like a cruel memory now. Like a joke the world was in on, but he wasn't. He whispered, "I'm sorry, kid. I'm so sorry." That was when the tears came. Quietly, not dramatic, not cinematic. Just salt water and regret, dripping onto the table like rain. He missed everything. The bedtime stories, the science projects, the scraped knees and "look what I made, Dad." He missed being somebody, and the world didn't care. He could have disappeared, and no one would know. Not the neighbors, not his old friends. Certainly not Claire. She'd won that he had no job, no credibility. And now, with missed support payments stacking up, her lawyer filed a motion for permanent custody with no visitation. Unfit, the document said. He laughed, broken, bitter. Not because it was funny, but because it was true. He was unfit now. Not because he didn't care, but because he had nothing left to give. He grabbed the whiskey bottle, but set it back down. Looked at the photo again. His voice cracked. "Lucas, I don't know how to fight her anymore." There was no courtroom left, no job left, no name left. Just the crushing silence of a man at the bottom of something he couldn't climb out of. But somewhere, buried beneath that silence, was a flicker, a memory of little hands tugging on his shirt saying, "You're my hero, Dad." And for the first time in weeks, Marcus didn't feel drunk. He just felt angry, and very, very awake. The floor smelled like bleach and old gum. Marcus pushed the mop across the school hallway in long mechanical strokes. The hum of the overhead lights buzzed above him, the kind of sound that never really stopped, like a constant reminder that you were somewhere you didn't belong. He wore a Navy custodial uniform, too big in the sleeves. His name stitched in red thread above the heart. Marcus. No one called him by it. To most of the staff, he was invisible. The guy who cleaned up after pep rallies and vomit in the lunchroom. To the students, he was background noise. Sometimes they whispered about him. Sometimes they joked. What did he do to end up here? He didn't care. Not anymore. Not until the Tuesday afternoon he found a backpack left behind in the gym. He opened it, looking for an ID, found a half-eaten sandwich, a drawing of a dragon, and a student planner with the name E-Tran. He walked it down the hall and knocked on a classroom door. "Sorry to interrupt," he said quietly. "Someone left this." The teacher nodded, surprised. "Elliot, go grab your backpack." A scrawny boy with shaggy hair stood up sheepishly and took it. "Thanks, mister." Marcus gave a small nod and turned to leave. "Hey," the boy added, "you're like the nicest person here." Marcus froze mid-step. It wasn't much. Just a sentence. Just a kid being polite. But something about the words stopped the noise in his head, just for a moment. Cut through the numbness. The next day, Marcus came to work 10 minutes early. He polished the trophy case without being asked. Tightened a loose doorknob he'd walked past for weeks. No one noticed, but he did. It wasn't glory. It wasn't payback. But it was control over one small thing. In one small corner of the world. That night, he stood in front of the mirror, shaved, buttoned up a shirt that actually fit. He stared at himself, older than he remembered, eyes tired but clear. He wasn't the man he used to be. But maybe, just maybe, he wasn't done yet. The rain came fast that night, the kind of cold, relentless downpour that turns city streets into rivers and makes every pedestrian flinch under awnings and bus shelters. But Marcus walked through it anyway, no umbrella, hood up, boots soaked. It had been a long shift, the kind that leaves your back sore and your mind too tired to argue with itself. He carried a bag of discounted groceries, noodles, eggs, whatever was cheap. As he approached the main intersection, he saw it, the blur of headlights. A red light ignored. And then impact. Gray sedan shot through the intersection and slammed into a black Mercedes crossing lawfully on green. The sound was deafening. Metal folding into itself, glass exploding like shrapnel. The Mercedes spun, mounted the curb, and came to a smoking halt against a power pole. For a split second, everything was still. Then came the fire. A small spark at first, near the hood. Then smoke. Then flame. People stood frozen on the sidewalk, stunned, scared, filming on their phones. Marcus ran, dropped the groceries. Sprinting full speed into the rain, into the heat, into the wreckage. His mind blank, just motion. Just instinct. The driver's side door was crumpled. He could barely see through the smoke-stained glass, but inside was a woman, slumped over, unconscious, blood trickling from her brow. He slammed his shoulder into the door once, twice. On the third hit, it cracked open. The flames were crawling. Now licking toward the gas line, he fumbled for his box cutter, the one he used at work to slice open soap boxes, and cut the seatbelt. She was heavier than she looked. Or maybe he was just weaker than he remembered. But he dragged her. Clear, a few feet away from the car, and then boom. The car exploded behind them in a roaring blast of fire and glass. The heat singed the back of his coat. He shielded her body with his own as debris rained down. People screamed. Sirens began to wail in the distance. He checked her pulse. It was there, weak, but alive. Only then did he finally look at her face. Bloodied, smoke-smeared, but unmistakable. Claire, the woman who ruined his life. Marcus sat back, gasping, rain dripping off his chin, and whispered to no one. "You've got to be kidding me." The ambulance lights flickered red and white across the wet pavement as Marcus stood soaked to the bone, coat half burned, hands trembling from adrenaline and pain. A paramedic had wrapped his arm where a flying shard of glass had sliced him. Open. He didn't even remember feeling it. Another medic hovered over the woman on the stretcher. "She's lucky," he muttered. 10 more seconds, and... The words trailed off as Marcus stepped closer. Claire was barely conscious now, strapped down, oxygen mask over her face, pupils sluggish. Her eyes fluttered open for half a second. Recognition. Hit like a slap. Her mouth moved. "Marcus?" He said nothing, didn't nod, didn't blink. Just stood there, staring at the woman who, 5 years ago, had sat across a courtroom and shredded his life to pieces, took his son, his job, his dignity. And now, here she was, lying broken, alive because he couldn't watch another human being burn. Even her. The paramedics looked at him. "Do you know her name, sir? We need full ID for intake." He hesitated. Everything in him screamed to walk away. Let fate finish what it started. Let the system taste its own poison. But Lucas's face came rushing back, that picture by the salt shaker, that little boy's voice. "You're my hero, Dad." He cleared his throat. "Claire Whitmore," he said finally, voice low and bitter. She's a CEO of Whitmore Global Holdings." The MT raised his eyebrows. "No kidding? Looks like someone up there likes her." Marcus looked up at the black sky. "Yeah," he muttered. "Someone." The ambulance doors slammed shut. As the sirens faded, Marcus stood alone again, the city swallowing the moment like it never happened. No applause, no cameras. No thank you, just the blood on his sleeve and the taste of old betrayal in his mouth. But deep inside, a piece of him, the smallest piece, felt human again. He didn't save Claire because she deserved it. He saved her because he did. The bright white of the hospital corridors stung Marcus's eyes as he sat silently on a plastic chair, drying blood still crusted on his knuckles. The paramedics had thanked him. A nurse handed him a coffee he didn't ask for. But no one asked for his name, and he didn't offer it. Behind the glass, in a private room, lay the woman he'd pulled from the crushed metal frame. Just hours before, bandaged, breathing, alive. Then came the noise. Reporters, flashes, security. Scrambling. A man in a blazer whispered urgently to the nurse's station. Someone said the name, Claire Halden. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. He stood, staring into the glass. The woman he'd dragged from the wreck. The one whose blood was still on his shirt. Claire Halden, CEO of Verexon Technologies, architect of the layoffs, the merger, the legal maneuvering that crushed not just his job, but his reputation. He turned away, fast. Down the stairs, through the service exit. He didn't look back. In the parking lot, the evening sun lit up his faded denim jacket. He got into his rusted sedan, gripping the wheel with white knuckles. His hands shook, not from fear. From the cruel twist of fate. Of all people, he muttered. But he never told anyone. He just drove home, where the fridge was still half empty, the mailbox still full of overdue notices, and the tiny Spider-Man blanket still covered his son's bed. A week later, the video surfaced. It began as a quiet ripple, a 45-second clip from a responding officer's body cam. The aftermath of the crash, fire licking at the car. And then, Marcus dragging a woman from the wreckage, coughing, bleeding, falling to his knees. No face shown clearly, no name given. But the internet has eyes. Who is this man? The headlines read,